Okay, so good evening to colleagues in Japan and good morning to the people in the United States, Washington, D.C. My name is Obi. I'm from Keio University, Japan, and I'm very much honored and pleased to chair today's USJI seminar. I suppose everyone is familiar with the activity of USJI and also the purpose of the webinar today. So that I would like to jump into the first presentation by Ms. Veronica Onevole, who is a very much important key person from US side to operate this COIL program. So she will spend first 10 to 15 minutes for her presentation, followed by presentation by Professor Sugimura, who is a very much established professor at Sophia University in Japan. And she will spend another 15 minutes to present her turn. Then we are going to answer some questions which are sent to us in advance before we answer to the question by audience today. So let me start with Veronica's presentation. I think I do not need to introduce anything more, so that people can read the bio on the internet. So that please just jump in her presentation. Veronica, it's your time. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Obi. Hello, my name is Veronica Onevole, and I'm the Project Director of Virtual Exchange COIL Initiatives at the American Council on Education, the major coordinating body for the United States higher education. はじめまして。私の名前はベロニカ・オノレブリです。私は米国高等教育の主要な調整機関であるアメリカ教育評議会 ACE のバーチャルコイルイニシティブのディレクターです。よろしくお願いします。I'm honored to have been invited by the US-Japan Research Institute to co-present with my colleague, Dr. Sugimura, and to meet for the first time Dr. Obi. It is a pleasure to have the opportunity to speak to you on behalf of the American Council on Education, building upon its role as the only umbrella organization to represent the entire U.S. higher education sector. ACE is committed to incentivizing higher education interconnectivity through virtual exchange. Consequently, for today's webinar, I do not intend to speak of ACE programs, but rather instead what I hope to do this morning is give you an overview of the thinking behind the COIL programs and discuss what collaborative online international learning is with examples, and to encourage you to think of how COIL will influence international education and encourage you to think about the possibilities that COIL will open to faculty, students, and higher education institutions in the US and Japan and around the world. My own personal belief in COIL is completely informed by the conviction that right now the future of international education is dependent on investment in academic and professional instructors' virtual teaching. Even before travel restrictions were put in place, in the United States, only 90% of American students were able to go abroad. And now, all over the world, students are physically and socially isolated, unable to study on campus, and thus unable to build deeper relationships with one another on a meaningfully connected way with the rest of the world. Collaborative online international learning, when intentionally and considerately designed, can be a very powerful remedy to combat unequal access to education, networks, platforms, and funding, and crucially, create environments that cultivate and recognize and celebrate diversity, inclusion, and innovation by all. By design, COIL is intended to leverage diversity and interdisciplinarity as an implied learning research-based method of teaching and learning. And if I can indulge you for a moment, I'm going to try with technology to give you a brief video that ACE has endorsed from Florida International University. So I think it conceptualizes really well and explains probably better than me what COIL is. So I'm just going to pause. Sorry. Here we go. And I put Japanese subtitles for everyone too. Let me move the screen over. YouTube did not approve my Japanese subtitles, so not yet, so I'm going to do it this way. Okay.
Imagine trying to teach a person to swim without water. Well, the same holds true for global learning. If we want our students to gain the knowledge and skills of global citizenship, they need opportunities to work on shared challenges with people who are different from them, in our classrooms, our communities, around the world, and online. COIL, Collaborative Online International Learning, is a powerful form of global learning for both teachers and their students. With COIL, teachers in different institutions, countries, and cultures partner to design experiences that will challenge their students to connect their diverse knowledge and perspectives across borders of time, place, language, and discipline. COIL is an accessible form of global learning because it's often embedded within existing face-to-face, hybrid, or fully online courses. COIL collaborations can involve courses in the same discipline, such as students comparing different marine conservation practices across the world, or in complementary disciplines, such as architecture and anthropology students teaming up to create more culturally responsive building designs. COIL experiences usually last from 4 to 8 weeks, and they involve 3 main components. Icebreaker activities that help students get to know and trust each other. A collaborative task that demands diverse contributions from every person participating. And reflection activities that help students transform their COIL experiences into new ways of thinking about themselves, others, and the world around them. Sure, COIL uses technology to connect people and their ideas, and it often involves voice and video conferencing. But you don't have to be super tech-savvy to communicate and collaborate. Great COIL experiences can involve low-bandwidth, asynchronous exchanges using nothing but a smartphone. COIL faculty and students thrive when they're supported by a team of international education leaders, instructional technologists, and educational developers. And COIL is a critical component of robust, resilient international partnerships. COIL is powerful on its own, but when it connects faculty and students to other opportunities to engage with the world's knowledge network, such as language learning and intercultural dialogues, and teaching, research, study, service, and internships abroad, COIL maximizes its potential to enable global learning for all.
Okay, let me just stop that share. Sorry, I'm just gonna, if I can find my mouse to stop the share. I hope that video is helpful and gives a lot of insights into what COIL is and the mechanics of it. I'm just, sorry, my mouse decided to freeze. There we go. So in 2017, the Ministry of Education, Culture, Sports, and Technology, MEXT, approached AC with an idea to utilize COIL as a bilateral government framework for strengthening collaboration between Japanese and US universities. ACE knew from our own research that Japan was the #2 partner for US institutions, with China being #1, Japan #2, United Kingdom, Germany, and France. ACE recognized that COIL would build upon the numerous partnerships in place between US higher education institutions and Japan as a new mode of virtual collaboration. So essentially, AC and MEXT jointly devised, I'm just going to share my screen again. Okay. Sorry. There we go. So they jointly devised and put forward a bilateral COIL proposal before Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's Ministry of Foreign Affairs Task Force on Strengthening Grassroots Japan-US Ties. The primary objectives were to find solutions for revitalizing US-Japan student exchange, cultivating a global workforce, and enhancing leadership to strengthen US-Japan relations. The proposal was well received and was granted a 5-year commitment with appropriations commencing in 2018 as the Inter-University Exchange Project in COIL in Japan. And in the United States, the U.S. Embassy Tokyo committed for originally what was a 2-year initiative, but then became 3 years. ACE is proud to have a history of successful collaboration with Kansai University and the Institute for Innovative Global Education through the US-Japan COIL initiative, and most recently working together on a rapid response COIL intensive training program over the summer. Both of these programs, as I showed you before, is part of that 5-year initiative. Starting in 2014, Dr. Ikeda introduced COIL as an innovative approach to active student learning at Kansai University, and since has become the pioneer and the platform for the Inter-University Exchange Project COIL. With the leadership of IIGE, Japan has formed a national consortium that I know Dr. Sugimura is part of with Sophia University, as well as 21 other universities. So essentially, we just recently launched and are in the process of working with 28 higher ed institutions based in the US and Japan right now on supporting them to adapt their education and exchange programs into virtual exchange COILs. I invite you to click on the link if you can to see those universities that are listed. But it's been a very rapid, as the name suggests, program that was carefully conceived with the closure of campuses back in March and was deployed very quickly by both governments in May to then implement starting in June and finishing and next month in late September. So I wanted, as the theme suggests for today, to discuss a little bit more also about the realities, the pragmatic approaches here to the challenges of virtual exchange COIL. Starting a COIL course takes considerable time, effort, and coordination on the part of multiple faculty, staff, and administrators. But like, But like any initiative or new endeavor, the startup costs, especially time, are significant. But I also hope that you can see how the return on investment in COIL can be exponential. So this is, again, a listing of the different campus offices that often formulate into a working committee on at the initial start of developing a COIL course on campus. And this is also a rough breakdown from our US-Japan COIL initiative, and then the State University of New York COIL program that shows a comparison of the average investment per institution that was committed at the startup phase for developing a COIL program. But I must mention that this does not show the real costs in time and effort, the human labor involved. And so after, though, I want you to be mindful, though, looking at the numbers here that you see at the bottom, the average cost per student is still intrinsically very low compared to a study abroad program. And note that this cost goes down with time as more students enroll and as the instructors reteach their COIL courses without financial support. So the model is economical. I'm going to share just some of the preliminary results that have come out from the initiatives between the US and Japan pre-COVID, just in 1 year time frame. For the US side, this is the stat that you see here. The number of students that took part in a COIL, half of them went on to then a study abroad experience. So be mindful of my stat I told you before, about 10% of most Americans go abroad. This this is just the start of 1 year. We know now that as of January 2020, before the pandemic, between both projects in the US and Japan, we have roughly 30,000 students that are participating in mobility programs. So this is quite remarkable. And so for those that I know had sent questions in asking, is it a substitute or replacement? Certainly not. We see COIL as an enhancer to encouraging students to go take that plunge and actually go abroad. We also see, and we're doing a study, which I'll go back to a couple slides before, that evaluates on a meta level the transformation of institutions themselves over a long period of time. So showing the stakeholders before in my earlier slide, you can see that this is really a change in culture for many institutions to collaborate intra-campus in ways that they never have before. And we've seen that this, though, has the potential to grow out existing international education programs, but also enhance faculty professional development. I mentioned the student mobility piece, strengthening the partnerships, but really making institutions more nimble in a strategic way and tying it to their mission. Also, the curriculum is enhanced tremendously by having interdisciplinary or multidisciplinary collaborations take place. This is just a smattering, just a very small sample of the different kinds of courses we have seen that you can see is really robust and a variety of discipline areas. And new interdisciplinary fields and curriculum have been created because of COIL collaboration. So this is definitely what we see as a way to help bring US institutions, but also higher ed as a whole into today's fold of what's needed in the workforce. Workforce development wise, one of the interesting stats that I just happened to come across when we launched our initiative in 2018 was that the applying institutions that took the most interest in the program coincidentally came from states where Japan has the highest foreign direct investment for employment. Again, connecting the dots, we see that for a future iteration of this project, we want to connect through to having internships, so virtual internships if necessary, or physically in-person internships following a student's conclusion of a COIL experience. Briefly, because I want to give more time to my colleague, Dr. Sugimura, so she can talk to the real applications in her campus. I wanted to just mention the challenges that we foreshadowed before COVID on how to sustain COIL in both countries. One of the things to note, we noted, is that faculty in Japan were often contracted and were, because of the existing Japanese faculty having either a lack of confidence in their language skills or being overburdened with course loads, we were concerned that the longevity of the programs would stop with that temporary faculty that was hired. So that's concerning right now for us. And also looking at the commitment that those multiple stakeholders that I showed before of, especially now at COVID, where there's depleted resources and oftentimes very short-sighted goals, right, to remedy the current issues. And also a lack of structure, right? So formulating a committee that I mentioned is one benefit that we go through in our training exercises with institutions that I'm happy to entertain questions on later. On the US side, on the flip side, our concerns are with, competing interests because of purely time zones, just, having COIL with other countries that have more aligned academic calendars is a concern. And the same, though, for institutional commitment, we see there's particularly a lack of assessment culture happening. And this is obviously not just isolated to COIL, but across programs in general. So kind of creating that, building that from the beginning, right? That there needs to be an assessment plan. And even if it's not perfect, how do we at least have something better than nothing? We are trying to work on that with institutions. Again, the limited resources, especially now that we're in a holding pattern with mobility, and the future of mobility looking cumbersome. How can we build on this? And we really do feel, though, particularly that COIL is, for now, has catapulted up to attention of institutions to retain mobility and keep it going. We certainly don't think it's the end, and we hope that it can run in the long term complementary to mobility programs and other forms of international collaboration. So that's really a shorter form presentation than probably the time I was allotted. But I wanted to leave room for a lot of active discussion. So thank you again for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Veronica. Because of this interest of time, please just let me go on with the next presentation by Dr. Sugimura. We shall come back to Veronica's presentation after Dr. Sugimura's one, if it's necessary. So, Professor Sugimura, the time is yours. So please start the presentation when you are ready.
Thank you very much, Dr. Obi. Please let me share my slide. So first of all, I'd like to appreciate this wonderful occasion to have a presentation on this USJI seminar. My name is Miki Sugimura from Sophia University, and I'm very honored to have this presentation here. Veronica's wonderful and beautiful Japanese remind me of the time when I met you the first time in the 2018. And at the time, I joined that the ceremony of the US-Japan, the government, the agreement on the online education in the Washington, D.C. And but to tell the truth, at that time, nobody expected such a situation in such a COVID-19 era. Because now the universities are facing these problems. And of course, as I also am one of the administration of the university side, every day I'm challenging those points in the institute governance and issues, and also the external governance and even the student mobility or the researchers or faculty mobility has been suspended. So now, of course, the last decade, we have been developing the wonderful international higher education, the exchange, but now is almost suspended. So in that means, some people said maybe COIL or online or virtual exchange might be a kind of a replacement of those kind of mobility. But today, I'd like to emphasize the COIL is not only a replacement of those exchange, but also the more meaningful and innovative and very fruitful the learning and teaching the instruction method, I think. As Veronica already explained, virtual learning might have a lot of possibilities. Of course, we have a lot of issues on the going onto the COIL, but today, please let me share some experiences from my universities. We also are very new in this area, but thanks to Veronica Ace and also the Japanese government and also the American government and the Kansai University is a wonderful leading university of this area, and they are now making a platform among the Japanese universities. We follow them and we learned a little bit more. So now I want to explain some issues and some challenging, but a lot of possibilities on the COIL. Before starting my story, I'd like to introduce this table. This table was developed by Dr. Jen Knight of the University of Toronto. She's one of the leading international higher education researcher. And before COVID-19, she has already pointed out, now we must think about the next generation of the international higher education program, because a lot of people talk about the transnational education or cross-border education, but she already pointed out before the COVID-19 in 2017, she divided the 6 categories of the cross-cultural education. And I think these interesting the categorization can give us a lot of hint how we can enrich our the international higher education arena from now on, because we have a lot of opportunities and we have developed a lot of programs through franchise program, international branch campus, or partnership programs at joint universities and colleges. But a little different from the MOOC, which is self-study distance education, COIL might have more possibilities through the distance education with local academic partners. That's the point we want to emphasize. This is a brief story about from the Ministry of Education in Japan. And this point was already explained by Veronica, so I don't have to emphasize this one. But I appreciate again the ACE and the Kansai University COIL platform because they're leading us and both countries' universities now involving these wonderful activities more. So I thank you very much for both the two platforms. And the Sophia University, we are also very honored to be included this program. When the ACE and the next Ministry of Education Japan launched this inter-university project, we also approached this project with Ochanomizu Women's University and University of Shizuoka. And we 3 universities started the COIL program. Before that, sorry, we have no experiences in this area. But Sophia and Ochanomizu and University of Shizuoka were jointly selected as one of the Japanese universities to promote this COIL project. And since 2018, we started this project. Our topic is the collaborative online international learning programs toward the human security and multicultural coexistence. Why we chose this topic? Because we set up the 3 aims through this our program to provide globally connected education opportunities to students and to enhance multifaceted student mobility program, which incorporate resources from partner institutions and local societies, and to contribute toward the elimination of educational inequality through COIL for students in developing countries toward elimination of education inequality. Because sometimes some students or children have an unequal opportunity to learn. So in that case, even in that case, the COIL might have a lot of possibilities to send or launch our program to there. I just introduce some part. The several activities consisted on our project. And first, the COIL project is regarded as a means to connect students globally, and a wide range of courses incorporate COIL to enhance student learning and multicultural existence through in-class collaborations with international partners. The past course subjects include international nursing, educational development, intercultural communication, and environmental studies. Secondly, our inbound exchange students from COIL partner institutions participate in a unique mobility program in Japan, which combines student exchange experiences with optional COIL courses and educational programs offered by the 2 partner institutions in Japan. The past students have participated in advanced Japanese language courses at Ochanomizu University and a study tour, which includes company visit and cultural activity like internship organized by University of Shizuoka. So the students circulate the 3 universities in Japan, and for US students, when they come, after enjoying the COIL program, they join those kind of on-site program and a kind of hybrid the program they enjoyed. And third, the students who join the student exchange and short-term programs to COIL partner institutions now participate in preparatory and follow-up COIL sessions to enhance their learning. The sessions are catered to each program and maybe pre-lectures by faculty members at partner university, or a pen pal project, or the video exchange and consultation session with Senpais. And moreover, in collaboration with Jesuit Worldwide Learning Service might be very interesting opportunity. Later, I'll just to talk about it. This slide shows us how our students have a collaboration among us. This time, the Sophia and the University of Shizuoka trying to combine the University of Portland in the States and University of Shizuoka, Shizuoka Kenritsu Daigaku, have great COIL classes. This is one of the examples, the international cooperation method by Dr. Yae Yoshino, the Department of Nursing of Sophia University, and they exchange their opinions. Please look at some comments from Sophia students, and those nursing department students, usually they are very difficult to enjoy this kind of the international program, but because they are very tight schedule or tight curriculum, but finally, as a nursing student, they enjoy this kind of occasion. So this might be very interesting and wonderful occasion. And discussing the same issue with other nursing students from abroad was really exciting and precious. This is another case. And for example, the left side is a Jesuit Worldwide Learning. Our Sophia University is a Jesuit Catholic private university. So we're one of the members. In the Jesuit Worldwide Learning has also another unique COIL, a kind of COIL and online education. They send their produce a program, and they launched their program to the refugee camps in the world before the COVID-19, because the refugee camp people have few opportunities to learn in higher education. So they launched a program through COIL, and this time the Sophia joined this program in Myanmar. Besides the COIL and online education, before COVID-19 last year, the students visited the Myanmar, the refugee camp, and they enjoyed some exchange to learn together there. So this is one of the examples. And of course, a lot of universities now already started this kind of program, but we try to emphasize these points. These are some another examples of the Sophia. In spring semester 2020, we enjoyed these courses. The first one was Dr. Yae Yoshino's class, but besides it, we enjoyed the COIL Global Studies, graduate program of Global Studies, and the Center for Global Education Discovery. And not only the US University, but also some Malaysia or the Egypt might be a very good partner finally. Another good point, for example, the Vassar College, Sophia has not agreement with this college yet, but Ochanomizu University have a good partner to them, and Ochanomizu introduced their partner to us, so that's why we could start this kind of another collaboration. So not only among students, but also the institute level, through COIL, we could be combined each other. So this is another wonderful opportunity for us. And this is upcoming, this fall COIL project, and we are now planning and preparing for these courses. So we hope our courses can be more rich, and I hope the student, but not only student, but also the faculty members can enjoy this kind of a new challenging. Of course, not only the good point, we must have overcome some challenging points of COIL and virtual learning. Yeah, actually, Sophia was very luckily be accepted by some programs of ACE and IIGE, and which is produced by the Kansai University. And they launched the rapid COIL collaboration in last July. And thank you very much again. Our faculty and some administration staff enjoyed these training courses. And through training courses, we could learn some point. When we started this kind of COIL or design this kind of program, first of all, we need to find complementary, the strengths in partnership. So institutional policy or institutional culture might be very important to be shared and understand. And not only the finding the partner, we need to build the campus support for COIL or virtual learning and virtual education. Of course, the university side, the governance also support us, but not only the governance, we try to link between the education program and research. This is the maybe faculty side, and the cooperation among faculty and staff, the collaboration should be very important when we reach the program. So that's the point. And also to create the COIL and virtual learning, the program assessment should be very important. When I also joined the ACE, the wonderful training courses by IIGE and Kansai University, I could learn how we can make a program and how we can assess this program. Of course, this autumn semester or next spring, we launch some COIL program more. So at that time, we must create a good assessment ways, but this might be very important point to assure the quality of the COIL program. Some people are worried about maybe online or virtual might be less qualitative approach, But I don't think so, because now, as I shown you some example from our university's case, the COIL have a lot of opportunity to enrich our program through the university and the student good academic experiences. But anyway, we need to assess to assure those kind of quality, so student learning output or outcome and capacity building might be very important point to be shared and examined through this program. And the quality assurance, so finally, the internal and external quality assurance always be discussing in the international higher education arena. But now, if we can clear these points, we might be able to make more the good network, a global network through this COIL program. Besides COIL, of course, we have now a lot of the international education network, not only in Asia, in the US or some European or Africa or Latin America also. So now, at least our university trying to combine those universities in the world by COIL. But in that case, we need to establish a good maybe exchange of credit, or the credit assurance issues might be very important. So these are points to be shared, and I'd like to discuss these points later. And finally, I'd like to point out again the significances of COIL and virtual learning again, because of course the COIL might be one of the cross-border education or the program or provider mobility, but not only this one. When we think about or rethink the internationalization at this point, COIL might give us a lot of hint how we can reconstruct the internationalization. Before the COVID-19, the internationalization at home, this concept have been already discussed in a lot of occasions, and some good researchers have developed this kind of concept through designing the good program. But the many kind of practices we always need to share knowledge, values, and to create a shared trust. This is very important when we think about the international higher education. Finally, just to introduce this book. This book is quite recently published by UNESCO, and UNESCO, the international committee, which committee is now designing the very long-term kind of education planning called Futures of Education. But they launched has already one book, Education in a Post-COVID World, and they proposed the 9 ideas for public action. The COVID-19 crisis has, of course, a lot of opportunities for us to rethink about the purpose and function of education. And I think maybe international higher education might be a very good element of those one. So I hope our COIL activities can create the shared values and shared trust field among students, but not only students, but also the faculty members and the institutions between the US and Japan and some more than other countries. So thank you very much for your kind attendance. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Sugimura. I just have received a very quick question from the audience. It is impressive that Sophia University provides numerous COIL courses with US universities. In what time of the day those courses are set? Early morning or late night for overcoming the time lag? Professor Sugimura, do you have an immediate answer?
Yes, thank you very much. This is very important and practical point to be combined. Actually, on the East Coast, like today, yes, sometime today now it's in Japan it's very late evening. So usually we use the morning time in Japan and the evening time in the US. But the West Coast of the US is better, and we can sometime we can make a little late afternoon classes, can use early morning in the US. So we try to adjust, but not only the online, on demand, or the exchange video films might be very interesting tools. So we try to mix method, not only the on-site, but also exchanging some video or some materials, some reports, might be very good idea for us to enrich our program. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Veronica, do you have any other possibilities to cope with the time difference?
Yes, actually, we just hosted Kapiolani Community College and Kansai University did a webinar on Monday, Japan time, Sunday night, US time, on balancing asynchronous, synchronous tasks for the students when, in their instance, there is a 19-hour time difference. I'll send a link to that webinar for those of you who are interested in learning some of their tips that they had. But absolutely, I think the standard is to try to do a mix, a balance. Some oftentimes it's actually more asynchronous for Japan and the US, and how to keep the students engaged and active and actually doing the asynchronous tasks has been, I know, a careful balancing act for instructors, but many really clever ideas have come out. And the number one aspect of it is empowering the students to decide what technology tools to use to talk, right? We know WhatsApp is very popular. We know Line is very popular in Japan. There are ways that the students know. They do it socially. So it's designing, though, the activities so that they are compelled to get information from their counterpart and to do it with a timeline that's clear from the professors ahead of time, and with knowledge of a rubric, a way to assess themselves on how they're doing, and to create their own communication guidelines, right? I think are factors to consider when you're doing especially asynchronous activities. So this type of strategies are described in the webinar, but there's also very useful tips that many institutions have come out with on this concept. So I encourage folks to take a look at our resources that we have for further information.
Good. Thank you. Before I announce how to post the questions, there are already some showing up in my window, and the audience are all welcome to raise your questions using the Q&A function or chat, so that I can pick up as many questions as possible during these sessions. Do you see these questions too, Veronica and Sugima-sensei? Okay, let's go with the first one. This is raised by anonymous audience. How can we register these COIL classes in Sofia? So please ask at Sofia University.
Yes, please, later. Now it's not time. Yeah,
and
we're very honored to welcome this one.
Okay. How do you recruit faculty and lecturers to develop COIL classes? Do you give any incentives to them? Probably, Dr. Sugimura, you can answer for the case of Sofia University.
Yeah, thank you very much. This is a very good question, very important question. So, for example, when the ACE and the Kansai IIGE asked us to join the rapid response on the COVID-19 through COIL, we asked some professors because the three universities approached Sophia, and they asked, is there some professors of cross-cultural communication? So I tried to look for some professors and I asked them. And of course, sometimes if they are very busy, sorry, but most of the cases, I try to relate their research or their classes to those topics. Then most of the professors of Sophia have agreed to involve with this project, so I'm very happy. But this is very important step for us to forward this COIL project. Thank you.
Good. So there's no incentive provided by university?
But now, yeah, finally we are accepted by the next project. So we have some incentive, but not so much. So that's the point. Yes. Thank you very much.
Okay. So next question is specified to Veronica. You have mentioned the new birth of interdisciplinary field out of COIL activities. Can you give us the example? I am very much interested in what COIL can do to develop a new field of research. Thank you. Given by Mr.
Sure. I'll answer, but can I also answer or make additional comments to the other question about faculty incentives? Okay.
Okay, please.
I have started to become a little, I don't like to use the word buy-in or seeming like we're selling COIL as a concept to faculty. Often what I've become to learn and with the listening to so many institutions is that it's really about equity and inclusion. So in the sense of alleviating the stress of the heavy burden that a lot of faculty have is part of the answer of motivation. I think a good instructor, a good teacher wants to always enhance the craft of their teaching. And it has more to do with concerns about, can they handle it? Can they manage it on top of the many different tasks they're being asked? Acknowledging and in giving, having an institution culture where it's embraced to acknowledge the time and commitment that goes into innovating, I think is the real motivation that will help give faculty the breathing room to take on different approaches. So it's not necessarily waving a grant at them, though that's often very helpful for getting a purchasing an assessment tool, perhaps. But I think it goes into also how you recognize your faculty from the start and creating this inclusivity where it's not just to select faculty, that anyone really can experiment in this on your campus. So I only make that mention. And with regards to the question on interdisciplinary examples, I'd have to go through some, but the one that kind of floats in my head because I was the most intrigued, and maybe it's not, was that we've seen STEM fields with humanities collaborate in unique ways through COIL. So it's not from one of our programs, but I've borrowed it from another great initiative, the Stevens Initiative, where they showed a COIL with a U.S. institution, Middle East institution, where it was between the chemistry class and performing arts class, dance class. And it was looking at the chemistry of dance, which I found fascinating. There's a lot of fun ways that it's being adapted. Another one that was one of our programs, it was with it was a three-way COIL, which can be, it doesn't have to be one-on-one, but it was with a communications class, a public diplomacy class, and biomedical sciences. And weirdly, the timing of it was kind of interesting. They were looking at the Zika virus in South America and how it was handled by politicians, by the media, and also by public health officials. And so we had scientists that study the Zika virus itself and how it spreads. And then you have others coming at it from a different approach. There's research now that these three groups are presenting on before really prestigious journals that I'm excited to see happen. And their course took place right when the coronavirus pandemic started. So their application to the Zika virus is now being transferred to researching how COVID is being handled globally. So this is just, again, it can go in so many ways that is beyond my own wave of creativity. So yeah, I'll try to list out a few more examples and send it to some of the audience members after the webinar.
Okay, thank you. Next question. We have found that some students become tired when engaging in video seminars, maybe because of them looking at the screen for over an hour. How do you overcome this? Do you have any experience, Veronica?
Well, I'm sure Dr. Sugimura has more experience on this, but yeah, it's just really from the knowledge from hearing from other institutions, that strategizing of how do you break it up, right? So it's also in our workplace culture now coming out about Zoom fatigue, right? So that's how do you break up the activities, make it very interactive, shorter, have moments where students can get up and get water, have breaks. These are all different, some seems common sense, but we forget. We have a tendency to want to pack everything in and make long 2-hour Zooms. That's just not healthy. And we do shut down, all of us, whether you're a student or whatever your age is. So there's best practices for better or worse that have come out now because we have so many of us now doing this for everything, that I really think that it's become more understood that we have to do it in shorter formats, definitely more interactive, creative breaks, even physically getting up and doing stretches. I've seen yoga broken out by faculty as a way to keep the stimulation happening. So I could do some yoga
Yeah.
right now.
And thank you. If I add some points, yes. Actually, I also have some experience in teaching in online the last spring semester. And of course, sometimes students seem to be very tired because I have a lot of talk. But sometimes we use a breakout session, or sometimes we mix some on demand and online. And in that mean, I belong to the education department of Sophia, and we had a retreat at the end of the last month. And we shared some of the teaching experiences among our professors. This is a wonderful occasion for us to learn a lot of opportunities, how we can elaborate the classes more. And so the COIL is not for students, but also for the faculty members, staff development or faculty development. And this is another good point for us. And maybe this might be related to the next questions, is how we can relate the transdisciplinary or trans approach. Might be the Sophia case. For example, the environmental studies might be a very good example how we can enrich our program from the transdisciplinary approach. If we can combine some institute in the world, we can compare some of the environmental issues with the different perspectives. So students and even the researchers don't have to go there, but they can learn the many good knowledge and opportunities or values on the environmental studies. So if we can develop this kind of the research method or the teaching method through the COIL, might be good for us, I think. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. We have still many questions. I think more questions than we can cope with, but let us try. So next one is, do you plan to organize particular engaged COIL sessions for Japanese and American faculty members to learn teaching methods for the advancement of COIL programs? Is there any such activities? Veronica, maybe?
Yes, so we have right now a webinar series, and I mentioned one of them that started earlier this week that we are running at ACE in conjunction with our partner IGE that tackles these types of points of teaching methods. So yeah, we had opened it up to our virtual exchange COIL community and can certainly send you the links to those events so you can participate going forward.
Good, thank you. Next question. I'm wondering the level of English fluency required for Japanese students to effectively join COIL projects. Could you tell us, for example, the scores of TOEFL, TOEIC, IELTS, and so on? Maybe Dr. Sugimura, you can answer to this question for the case of Sophia.
Yes, thank you very much for another good question. Yeah, this is a very controversial point because some faculty members insist on the high score of the TOEFL because even so, the student cannot exchange or enrich the conversation or doing some research together. So, for example, the Sophia, the faculty of liberal arts is very high. The TOEFL score is about 100 or more than 90. So they are very more native speakers. But to tell the truth, my opinion, even some students who are not good at English, they try to speak to some different country people with different cultural background, and once they can make a conversation or a very very short conversation, they can have a kind of confidence, and they can start to learn more, and they can try to tell or try to communicate. So that's why I think maybe English requirement is important, but not only the scores, the maybe more, how can I say, the awareness of the learning spontaneously might be more important, or enthusiasm more important when we reach our the COIL project, I think. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, we intentionally made our trainings bilingual, and we're continuing that trend because we see the bias, implicit bias of making everything English. Even though it's become the international standard for various reasons, we still encourage that it's the process of communicating, not the language that's being utilized, that's more important to us.
Okay, thank you very much. Next question is probably from a student. Is it possible that international student in Sofia or Kansai University to join COIL program? I think the answer is yes. So let's
yes,
go to the next
please.
question. What ideas do you have for sustaining financially the great COIL initiatives you have introduced today? So financial sustainability. Anyone to answer?
So really, COIL has started more traditionally from the bottom up at many institutions, but financially to start really scaling it is again related to the institution's investment in freeing up the labor, the time for faculty. There isn't a high cost here. The technologies are cheap and accessible. This is really about more the human capital cost question. So it's redistributing how you manage time of your faculty and staff to have the opportunity to sit down with each other virtually or in person to plan it out in a strategic way. That's really the cost.
Okay, so next question. What's the ultimate goal of COIL, and how do you measure or assess the program's success? Big question. Maybe
Yes.
Veronica?
So I skipped over something earlier in my presentation. So let me just really quick. Whoops, that's not helpful. Hold on. While I'm fumbling with the PowerPoint, one of the things I wanted to really mention is that we're doing an assessment that's comprehensive overall, but the main goal really is to create so that COIL isn't something separate. It's not something extracurricular. This is a part of general education. That's our ultimate goal. We see that it can be embedded in anything, and its values are universal across disciplines and across institutional missions and strategies. So yeah, ultimately making this a standard, not something exceptional.
Yeah, I totally agree with Veronica. Yeah, this is very good for a question for general education. But this is another good point to be shared. It might be next maybe agenda of USJI seminar, I think.
Yeah, it's hard.
More.
We're in a big project, a research project with
right.
IGE, and it's we have something called the COIL Bevy project, and it's a multi-year initiative that has been started with US Japan, but we're inviting other countries into it too, and we're creating standards of practice to do the measurements, right? To do accurate measurements of what everybody wants to hear, right? What is the impact on learning, really? Not just for students, but also faculty themselves and the administrators involved. What is the overall change in how students perceive and faculty perceive their counterparts and vice versa. So how do we measure that when there's humans are complicated, right? We all come with different preset notions and beliefs. So we're using something called the Bevy, Beliefs, Events, Values instrument that we are asking the institutions to also use as a baseline measure, but certainly can use their other assessment tools to help build out the case so that we can move forward with that ultimate goal of making it a part of general education.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that was very good question to close the session because we just passed the scheduled time to conclude the seminar today. I'd like to thank everyone who participated in this seminar and also participated by asking questions. I'm very sorry that there are still 9 questions unanswered on my list, but I will discuss with the coordinator of the seminar how to answer these questions on the website probably as much as possible. So thank you very much again for your participation and see you soon again on some occasion of USJI activity. Thank you very much for Veronica and Dr. Sugimura. Thank you very much.
Thank you. お疲れ様でした。
ありがとうございました。Thank you very much for everyone. Thank you.
Bye bye.